Good morning. Another live interview with Become a Fearless Father. And I got Ayo here all the way from Dubai. I got some great topics to talk about, and I know he's got some great insights and experience to share about those topics. And of course, we will get to know Ayo a little bit better. Before we start, man, first of all, thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it. You taking the time out of your day to join us and enlighten us with your knowledge.
I'm
And
really
before
happy to be here. Thanks for
oh,
having me.
absolutely great. So before we jump into who is Ayo and your whole family setup and everything, we connected and you mentioned like you're working on conscious parenting, conscious parent, and I really love that. It really connected with me, of course, as my business has become a fearless father, and I first of all wanted to make sure that the people that are joining us, either now live or later on listening to the recording, what does it mean to be a conscious parent?
Okay, so the term conscious parenting is a term that's been made really popular by Dr. Shifali, and
Mm-hmm.
the way she uses it, it's slightly different from the way I use it. So in the space that I'm in, I have a lot of people that I communicate and interact with that are very busy parents. They're either building businesses or they have busy
Mm-hmm.
careers. But the whole concept about conscious parenting is about being aware of how our interactions with our kids influence them and how the environment that we set up for our kids influence and shape their personalities and the kind of person that we become. And that is very aligned with Dr. Shafali, what she talks about. And what I have come to realize is the need to be a lot more deliberate and intentional about the
Mm-hmm.
way we interact with our kids and the kind of environments that we place them in, to be very conscious and aware of how their interactions affect us, the things that they do that trigger us, and how our responses affect them. So that's more or less in a nutshell what it encapsulates. It basically means that you are conscious and you are aware of how your behavior affects your child and how the environment for your that you create for your child affects the way he grows or she grows and evolves and becomes a young adult.
Mm. I like that. Really well explained as well. Very understandable. So that's great. So the fathers that are watching this right now, listening to the recording, and are thinking, "Wow, that actually sounds really great. I need to step up." Right? Which is a great realization, and I hope many many fathers out there will either are already there and making those steps. My question is also, how does one take the first steps, or what would you advise on what are good steps to take towards becoming a conscious parent?
All right, brilliant. So if it's okay with you, let me just give you a bit of a backstory, just to explain, to
Absolutely.
put it in context.
Mm-hmm.
So we live in Dubai. We're originally from Nigeria. And when I came to Dubai, because I'm in the education space, it was really important for me that I place my child in a school where I felt he would do really well. Or to, to correct that, I was looking for like the best school to place him in. And when we first moved here, I think he was about 3.5 years old then. And I placed him in a school that had really good ratings, really good rankings. Everything about the school was excellent. But I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't cognizant of the fact that he was the only African child in that school. He was the only dark skinned child in that school. And he started having problems. Um, some of the kids in school would tease him because he came in the second term when kids already had friends. So some of the kids in school, they would tease him. They called him kaka, which it kind of means poo poo in
Mm-hmm.
Arabic, right? But
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of a lot of things that were going on. And at the point, eventually, when I got to find out, I went to school, had a talk with the teacher. We looked at the environment, and eventually changed his school. But
Mm-hmm.
what that period that he had been there when all of this was going on, like a month and a half or two, it had a very profound effect on him. So when he got to the new school that he was in, even though it was much more international, he had a hard time making friends. And when I thought to myself, my wife and I said, listen, every good parent's goal is to raise kids that are happy, resilient, and have the skills they need to thrive in their world, right? What can we as parents do to help our child become a bit more resilient, to help our son become, start the day with a happier disposition. And that's when this whole concept of conscious parenting kind of started to evolve for me. And
Mm.
we started looking at things that we could do, like daily disciplines and habits that we could do that would help our child become happier and more resilient. And I'll give you just an example of them. And they're
Please.
very simple things, because one of my beliefs is that the more complicated a thing is, the harder it is to layer it and make it become a habit. So I'll give
Mhm.
you a very simple example. One of the first things we started doing then, every morning when we wake our kids up, we have this game we do. So I wake my son up and get him ready for school. My wife wakes my daughter up. And my
Mm.
wife and I have this kind of challenge or game that we do. So when we wake our kids up, we want to see how fast we can put a smile on their face. It's kind of like a game. So if we're able to make them laugh or smile really quickly, then we win, right? And sometimes they wake up and they're grumpy, and you can't do very much about that. But
Mhm.
just that alone, for kids waking up, you tickle them, you do silly things, they wake up and they start their day with a smile. It begins to prime their brain. And I'm a huge um, geek when it comes to like neuroscience and brain science, right? And so a lot of what I'm trying to do in the beginning of the day when my kid opens up his eyes is to find ways to put smiles on their faces before their day even begins. So
Mm.
those are some of the simple things that you can do as a conscious parent. But more importantly, because I've told myself that at least in this early stages of my kids' lives, I'm a custodian of their moods. I need to help protect their moods in the earlier part of the day. It
Mm.
also helps me control myself. So, for example, if my kid wakes up and is a bit grumpy and maybe he snaps when he shouldn't, the
Mhm.
normal reaction that a parent would have, like with the ego, is like, "How dare you? I'm your daddy. How dare you snap at me?" But because I'm very careful about how the first, especially the first 30 minutes of their day, about their mental states and their emotional states, then I'm able to rein myself in and then help them shift whatever it is that's making them feel that way. So when you to go back to the question you asked me, how does one become a conscious parent? It's about being deliberate about the things you do that help your child evolve and grow into the kind of person that they want to be.
Mm. Love it. Absolutely powerful. That's great advice. It's actually funny that I've I've been doing this unconsciously, and now that you say it, it's like, now there's some things clicking, because I'm actually consciously, deliberately doing this for myself, right? Because I know how powerful it is for 30 minutes. But for some reason, it never clicked with me, like to actually do that with my kids as well. However, because I'm already like this, well, like what you mentioned, right? You are in that space already. Your kids get affected by that a lot easier as well. So I appreciate you sharing that. Thanks for that. So let's dive into a little bit. Who is Ayo, and yeah, what's your family setup? Well, we know already now you got a son and a daughter, but yeah, please share with us your
Okay.
background story.
All right. Okay. So um, I'm in the education management space. That's what I do as a profession. I work for the world's largest education management company.
Mm.
I live here in Dubai with my family. I have an amazing woman that I'm married to. Just a quick side note: she and I were in the fourth grade together, and she's the first woman I ever had a crush on in my life.
Wow.
And 20 something years later, we got married. She's amazing, and then we have two kids. My son, he's turning 9 in August, and my daughter is turning 7 on Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Awesome, man. I love it. Um, and of course, you're working on conscious parenting as well, right? To start
Yes.
that up. Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
So
Perfect.
because of the space that I'm in, I have access to quite a number of people in the education space, and I interact a lot with parents because the company that I work for owns business schools, language schools, and boarding schools around the world. So I deal with a
Wow.
lot of parents who have
Mm.
kids in high school or in the earlier part of middle school, and I get a lot of questions that have to do with raising their kids or how they can better support their kids. And I work with a lot of professionals who I help. I'm like a bridge that gets answers to them. And
Mm-hmm.
because I've had a lot of this coming my way, one of the things that occurred to me was creating a platform where I can share a lot of the things that I've personally learned as a father
Mm-hmm.
and as well as a professional working in the education space. And that's why I'm creating Conscious Parenting. It's a podcast that's starting pretty soon, but also a community, an online community for parents to be able to share different challenges that they're having with kids. And I believe in the power of the hive mind, suggestions and recommendations from different parents that have gone through the kind of thing that you're going through right now, and that can proffer suggestions and solutions. And so that's what I'm creating, a safe space for parents to be able to come share the challenges that they're experiencing, learn from others, and contribute to the community as well, and help other families too.
Mm, love it. Nice, man. Well, first of all, of course, best of luck with setting that all up. We can't wait to have that up and running and see how successful that's going to be. So I appreciate you sharing that. You mentioned like you work in the educational for that educational management business. I'm just wondering, throughout all that, what is your, because I've let me get back one step. I had the pleasure of talking with a lot of dadpreneurs, and some of them homeschool, and then they have a very clear view on education and the school system. Others they don't homeschool and they're very happy as well. I'm just wondering, what's your view on current education and where the education system is going in the future?
Okay, so the first thing I want to say, and this is one of the things that we espouse in my organization, is that there really isn't a one size fits all cookie cutter answer. And education, a lot of it has to do with the child, right? So for example, I know some people who've chosen to go the homeschooling route because of, and they were all for specific reasons. And a couple of people who tried that and it didn't work out as well for them. So there's no one size fits all response to that in terms of the track that you take. But the thing that I am very, very aware of, and that I really encourage parents to do, is help their kids follow things that they're interested in. So for example, if your child is interested in robotics, or is interested in acting, or is interested in theater, you help them create environments where they can dive deeper and learn a whole lot more about this. That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing I want to say is that there are a lot of supplemental resources that can help your child do a whole lot better. I'll give you an example. Something that a lot of people are not very aware of right now is this whole accelerated learning process when it comes to like memory. Right now, many of us we teach our kids to pick up books and read them like the regular way. You read this way and then you try to regurgitate that. But if you need to remember things better, there are actually proven systems that help kids assimilate information a whole lot better. And I think a lot of educational institutions don't emphasize enough the importance of teaching kids how to learn, not just teaching them biology or teaching them mathematics, but teaching them how to break down information, how to commit that information to memory and assimilate it, and how to retrieve that memory. That in itself is a science that I think a lot more educational institutions need to really begin to look into.
And let me, so people know that actually I'm talking. So, because that's very interesting and something that I've been working on myself, but would love to share and teach my kids as well. Because yeah, you're right. I don't see it in the school system, and I prefer to be the one that's then taking the action myself and teaching it to my kids, or making sure that they can learn it from somewhere. So what would your advice be on parents that are fathers that are listening right now and thinking, wow, yes, it would be a great way for my kid to learn, learn how to learn, right? What are those resources? Where have you found them, or what would your advice be for those fathers out there that think that's indeed a great idea to progress that child?
So I'll give you one example. There's a fantastic gentleman by the name of Ron White. He's a two-time U.S. memory champion. There's actually something like the Memory Olympics or whatever they call it. But he's a two-time U.S. memory champion, and he has a course. It's called the Black Belt Memory System. Right? It's simple, easy to follow. I bought the course, I learned it, and then started teaching my kids based on what I had learned from that. And it's so useful. My son, for example, had a play in school. That was the end of last term, and he was struggling with a lot of lines. And I just said, okay, listen, you know what? Let's use the memory palace technique to remember this. And we chunked his lines down. And so he stood on, when the play came, he stood on stage, but he looked to the left, and immediately he entered his memory palace and started reciting his lines, like that. So it's simple, easy. I love the way Ron White breaks it down. He's an amazing guy.
Mhm.
And I'm not affiliated to him in any way. He's just someone who's provided a product that I really love. So that's one method. The other thing that a lot of parents could look at is, for a lot of kids, when it comes to testing, they have a lot of performance anxiety. So maybe you've taught that your child has studied, he's done all he should do, but the moment he sits down in front of his test or his exams, he gets nervous and he just kind of like forgets everything. And there's a reason why that is. So a lot of the information that we study and we learn, we have that sitting in part of our brain called the prefrontal cortex. But the moment people get into panic situations, a lot of the blood drains from the front of the brain, drains to the midbrain or the amygdala, and then they find that it's much harder to recollect all that information that they've studied. And so simple breathing patterns, like, my kids know, if you're feeling nervous, there's a particular way I teach them to breathe. It's called the box breathing method. They breathe in 5 counts, they hold for 5 counts, they breathe out 5 counts, they hold 5 counts. By the time they do that for like maybe 2-3 minutes, then they are a lot calmer. And if it's in a stressful situation, like they want to go give a little talk, or they want to write an exam, they know to do that right before they
Mm.
have that, and they perform a whole lot better. So there are a lot of supplementary meta learning resources that are online, and I'll be happy to share with you maybe a list of notes later that you could share with your audience if you'd like to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be great. And yeah, the breathing technique is definitely amazing. It works so well. I used it myself when I had my live interview with Rachel Peterson. I was nervous beyond all measures. So I was sitting for 5 minutes beforehand, like doing that. And I'm teaching it to my kids, especially when they get hurt.
Hmm.
But not like really, really hurt, but like, there's a little blood or whatever, they fell and they get into that panic mode, right? Like something happened. And then I first trying to make sure that, or when they're really like in a state where you prefer, they need to be a little calm, because if not, I can't understand what they're saying. So I try to first work on that. So it's great advice to, my kids don't have tests yet, but they will come up. So it's great advice to start doing that. And from that, for dads that are listening to this, teach it now. Don't teach it when, because what's going to happen with most of us, right? Then it happens, and then we think, yeah, I remember how you told us about the breathing technique, so maybe we should start with it. Then it's too late. Start now while they don't have any exams yet. So by the time they start, they can, because then still, if you get nervous, it's still like, you have to remember that you have to start doing that breathing technique. So practice it in a situation when you're calm. At least that's what I'm doing for myself and with my kids as well. Great
Yeah,
advice.
and,
I love
and if I
that.
could just
Mm.
drop something, just a little bit of a little nugget there. So one
Mm.
of the things that I've learned, right, try when I'm trying to get my kids to adopt a particular thing, I'm trying to teach them something or trying to get them to believe and take action on something, right? I
Mm.
found that, especially with kids below the age of 10, like
Mm.
stories work so well. We have, so our downtime before they go to bed, we have about 30 45 minutes we spend together, and the first maybe 15 minutes of that we do story time. And my, like, whenever I do stories, because I used to be in creative writing, so I love telling stories, but I always do two things. One, I personalize the story. So for example, your son is 6, right?
He just turned 6, yeah.
He just turned 6. What's his first name?
Diego.
Diego. So, for example, if I'm telling them a bedtime story and I'm trying to teach them something through the story, I'll say, "Oh, there was a little boy called Diego." I may not say Diego, but I'm trying to help him identify with the character who was 6 years
Mm.
old. And so their eyes perk up, and then I start telling them what it is that I think I want them to learn. And a really good example. So. In Dubai, for example, they say all of us are vitamin D3 deficient, but kids hate using supplements. And so when I decided that I needed to start getting my kids to use supplements, for like 2 different days, the bedtime stories I was telling them had to do with these kids who were in school, who were trying to play basketball, and then they started taking supplements, vitamin D3 supplements, and then they could dunk and do all kinds of cool things. And then they started begging me, Daddy, 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 can we have vitamin D3? That was after the story. And so that was kind of like a sneaky way of getting them to adopt that. So for parents who are looking to say, maybe you want to get your kid to start adopting like different breathing methods, using like stories to help them appreciate the value, especially for little kids, is a lovely way to get them to really adopt that and get it to stick with them.
Yeah, I like that. That's not a little gold nugget. That's a big golden nugget right there. Nice. Yep. Always enjoy those golden nuggets. Yeah, and then and for some, we started reading bedtime stories from the beginning, and they love it. And I actually, just a second, for some reason, there you go. And I actually sometimes find books and they already has their name in it. All right, Alex the Cowboy, which Alex is the name of my youngest son.
Mhm.
And they're like, sometimes they like it, sometimes they don't, because then it's like really, it's like their name. But that I didn't think about. It's like just changing it a little bit so it sounds like their name, so they identify it instead of saying, "Oh, that's me," right? So I like that's great advice. Man, let's hop in right to this one, because it becomes part of it, and it's some of the things that I've noticed that has changed our fun level with the kids, right? Trying to create special experiences with the kids, right? And one of the things apparently that you do is creating stories. But I'm wondering, what are some of the other things as a conscious parent that you can recommend fathers doing to create
Okay.
special experiences with their kids?
That's such a brilliant question. It's such a brilliant question. All right. So one of the things that let me just step back just a moment, right? Now,
Mhm.
our kids, one of the things that we need to understand, especially when they are below the ages of like 10, their sense of identity comes as a reflection of the things they that are reflected back to them from us, from those who surround them, from their primary caregivers. Now, I know I already mentioned story time or the unwinding time, but for me, I call them golden hours. The first 30 minutes of the day and the last 30 minutes of the day, they're very, very special. And one of the most powerful things that I've discovered is helping kids understand what they are a part of. I'll give you
Mm,
an example, and I kind of stumbled across this. So my surname is Olatoye, right? And Dubai is very international. My daughter was telling me that her friends tease her in school and say, "Oh, Tiba Tope Olatoye," that they kind of make fun of her name because it sounds funny. And then I
mm,
told her, I said, "Listen, do you know what your name means?" And in my language, Yoruba, like all names, most names carry a meaning. So my surname
mm,
Olatoye means, um, it means like my accomplishments are equivalent to like royalty or a title. And then I
mm,
started telling her stories about myself, about my father, about our grandfather, and things that they had done that, and for they might seem like simple small things to you, but you would see their eyes like really light up. And I try to do that at least once a week when I tell them something about our heritage or our parentage, where we're from, something their mom did that was like really, really cool back in uni days, something my grandfather did, something my grandmom did. And you can see the sense of pride and belonging that
mm,
kids have, and then I remember I was so touched after that first time I shared that with her. She was like, "Oh, next time they tell me that, I'm going to tell them, do you know what my name means? It means this, 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 and this is what my family is like." So I think that for me is really special for kids when they learn that they are part of something. That's
mm,
one of the things that you can really do to create special moments. The other thing that I really think, so a lot of us unconsciously do this. We kind of like talk down to our kids. Not
mm,
we kind of how do I explain this? We we make things a bit too abbreviated for them. And one of the things that I've really started doing now when I want my kids to open up, because for me, special moments are all about is either sharing a great experience or having deep level communication. So unlike
mm,
before, when I would get home and I would tell my kids during our wind down time, "Hey, how was your day, blah blah blah," I always start by sharing first, because that always prompts them to reciprocate. So for example, I say, hey, listen, I had like a really tough day at work. One of my colleagues or someone on my team said this, and I'm not happy because I got when I yelled at her and I kind of felt bad afterwards. It might be positive, it might be negative. But whenever you share things like that with kids, they're so wise. Then they start giving you advice. Did you apologize to her? When you
Mm,
apologize to her, what did she say? Oh, do you know what happened to me in school today? And then they start talking, and it's a much, much deeper conversation. One of the things that Dr. Shafali says, which I am like, it resonates so deeply with me, is that kids want to feel, they want to know that they are seen and they want to feel felt, right? And when you open up as a dad who is older, who's meant to be wiser, when you open up and you share your day with them, sometimes ask them for advice, and then when they're sharing back with you and you are listening intently to them, like, after those kind of conversations, the way they snuggle up to me, I can tell that we've had like a very special connection during that period. So those are some of the things that I think are good. um a third thing that I would mention in terms of creating like special moments, there's this research paper that talked about how, like, physical touch, it stimulates the production of oxytocin in the brains of adults and kids, and that's like it's a bonding chemical. And so one of the things that's really espoused is playing, like, physical play with kids, wrestling, tackling, stuff like that. When you guys are laughing and joking and happy, those are the richest moments for kids. We do things sometimes where do a lot of things in Dubai where we go out to parks and stuff like that. But when we are winding down during the day, I find that the times that mean the most to them is when we've had a chance to really, really connect and communicate together or do stuff together.
mhm. Yeah, very nice. Yeah, especially the sharing first thing, either positive or negative. That's definitely something that I'm going to try. I always try to ask first how their day was. I've learned indeed from another guy that was on my show. It's like we're so in our question asking not developed enough. Like we ask like, "Hey, how was your day?" Which gets you in that same response like, "Fine, good,
Yeah.
you know, bad." Instead of asking like, what was one of the most amazing things that you've done today, which really makes them think and makes them think about something positive and
Yeah.
sharing. I think that combined with sharing first how amazing or some of the things that you've done definitely would benefit even more in that. Great, man, love it. um so one of the things I'm sure, because I've from what I've heard, you follow Dr. Shafali, you've read papers on all parenting, all that stuff. So it seems like you're really working on improving yourself as a human being and as a parent, right? What are
Yes.
some of the tips or some of the habits that you've implemented to make sure that on a daily level you keep improving yourself?
Okay, so one of them is doing things like this, listening to podcasts like yours. And so when I started taking this whole parenting thing a lot more seriously was when so in my organization, I love the company that I work for. It's an amazing place to work. I feel I've grown a lot as a person here, and I look at how detailed we are with our plans. So we have the plans for the entire year. We have the plans for the quarters. We have the plans for the months and the weeks, and we have like 4, 5, 10-year plans down the road. And me and my team, we invest a lot in learning in order to be able to better execute our roles. We invest heavily in that. And I thought to myself, if I spend so much time learning about a job, which is a great job, right? But maybe in like another 6, 7, 8 years, I may not be here. I would look back and be happy about the things that I contributed to the organization. But how much time have I spent learning how to become a better parent? These kids, I'm only going to be with them till maybe they're 18 years old, and then they're off into the big wide world. And the impact that I've had on them in those first 18 years is going to define the kind of person they are. And I
Mhm.
thought to myself, above and beyond everything that I learn, you know, I need to, one, invest in personal development, growing, and two, spend a lot of time learning how to be a better parent. So that's why I invest in a lot of books, in a lot of courses. I listen to a lot of podcasts, follow people like Dr. Shafali, Dr. Joe Dispenza, just so that I can, even if it's just a little nugget that I'm able to get. Um, and I implement that in my child's life, it'll make such a huge transformation. And I'll give you just like a little example. So there's this powerful concept in psychology called priming. And I
Mhm.
know like part of waking them up and smiling is kind of like getting them ready for the day, but priming is getting people to interpret a future stimulus based on something that has previously happened. And so I one of the things that my wife and I do every morning, right? When I'm taking my son to the bathroom and I'm like shaking him up playing, I always say, what kind of day is it going to be today? And I've explained to them sort of in baby terms what priming is. And so their response is going to be the best day of my life. I say, I can't hear you. It's going to be the best day of my life. Say it so Tiwa can hear. It's going to be the best day of my life. And then they
Mhm.
smile. But that already puts them in a position to begin to interpret all that happens during the day in a positive light. And that's just one little thing that I picked up from, I don't even know, maybe a podcast or a book I read or something like that. And so I really think like parents owe it to themselves and to their kids to invest time in learning how to become a better parent.
Mhm.
For me, I think the first one of the first steps that one should take, and Dr. Tafari talks about this a whole lot, is being aware of your own emotional states when you're with kids and the things that trigger you. Because as wonderful as these kids are, sometimes they do things and you just want to yank out your hair, right? It's one of the most powerful things, or one of the best places for parents to start, is by taking pain or taking the time to invest in learning how to manage themselves a lot more emotionally around their kids so that they can create a safer, less turbulent environment for their kids to grow up in.
Mhm. Nice. Yeah, I'm loving it. Um, One of the things that I saw on your Facebook profile that I really liked was a post that you shared in regards to discipline, right? And from what I've heard right now, you have great views on the things that we talked about. So I'm sure you have great, let's call it philosophy on discipline. I would be really happy if you could share that with us.
Okay, so now if you look at the word discipline, it comes from the word disciple, right?
Hmm.
And if you, a disciple is someone who the ultimate objective of discipline is to teach something, not
Hmm.
to make the person a recipient of pain, right? And the thing is, as a parent, and that's one of the things that my wife and I we talk about a lot, right? We say, are we able to divorce our maybe our temporary anger or frustration from how we choose to discipline our kids or to get them to take a different path? And so one of the things that we've agreed, and a lot of times, so let me put this out there, like a lot of times we fail because we're all work in progress. Like I tell myself, I'm going to be patient, I'm not going to raise my voice, I'm going to, but every once in a while you do slip up. So this is not me saying I'm the perfect dad or anything like that, far from it. I'm a student trying to learn. But the important thing that you want to do is every time you make a decision and say, my child has done this, so therefore I need to discipline him in this way, ask yourself what lesson the child is going to learn from the action you're going to take, because the ultimate objective of discipline is to teach the child not to do this, not to make him feel pain and say, oh, okay, I can't do this when mom is around, but to help the child realize
Mm.
that this really is not the right is not good behavior. And that's why I know in child psychology they say that if you're going to discipline or reward, you should try to do it as soon as the action happens so the child can mentally connect those two. But one of the problems that we face as parents is if we're trying to respond very quickly, we often respond emotionally and end up hurting
Mhm.
the child and not teaching the child. So what my wife and I do, and we try to have a chat like every night, just um, about what we're doing or what we could do better. We look at the things that the kids, the kind of crimes that they commit the most. So for example, if it's about maybe fighting when they're eating or not cleaning up, you find that the things you get upset at your kids at, they're not unique. They happen over and over and over again. And so if we
Mhm.
tell ourselves, okay, when this behavior occurs, this is how we will respond, right?
Mhm.
So that way you take away the emotion and the spontaneity from it. It's simply we've logically agreed that when this child does this, this is how we're going to respond, and it's going to be different for different people. So for example, like the age difference between my son and my daughter is just 2 years, so they're very close together. We're teaching him, listen, even when you're roughhousing, like never hit your sister, don't do this, don't do that, don't bully her. Sometimes you hear my daughter, and she's a drama queen, right?
Mm,
Sometimes when my son takes away something or does something, she's screaming, and then you get there, and as the parent, you want to just dive in and solve everything. But already we have a standing order. We know that anytime there's an act of bullying that we know is an act of bullying, we take away this privilege. So you lose your iPad, you lose your headphones for the rest of the day, right?
mm,
Yeah. So things like that, we've kind of built in, and we're trying to do this and improve on it every day. But we know that for the things that happen frequently, we already have um, uh, a protocol to help teach the child not to do that. But then
mm,
apart from that, when that is done, because whenever you discipline kids, and I think this is the most important thing, when you discipline kids, they would always be upset, right?
mm,
And if you're trying to speak to them in the heat of the moment, they rarely ever absorb. But if there's a big incident, whenever we're having our wind down time at night, we make sure we talk about it. Like,
mm,
okay, listen, this happened. This is why I did this. Explain to me, why did you take this action? And the funny thing with kids, like even if your son does something that you think is bad, maybe he hit his sister, in his mind, he will he will be able to justify it and say, because she did this, and because she did this first, and then we're able to say, oh, but how do you think that would have felt? You're meant to be her big brother protecting her. If you hit her, how do you think, if that was you maybe, and you had like an older brother, or if your mom hit you like that, how do you think you would feel? And then he's
mm,
a bit more sober. It really hurts her because she looks up to you, blah 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 blah. Okay, if that happens again, what do you think, what would you do? So let's imagine, like, your sister did exactly that same thing. She took the little cardboard house you've been making, and she spoilt it. Like, how would you respond next time? And then we start trying to coach them on how to respond. And it doesn't always work. Sometimes you do that, and the same thing happens again 3 days down the road. But already he started learning to self-manage. The moment you walk in, he says, okay, I know I shouldn't have done this. I'm sorry, I kind of responded uh, spontaneously. So it's a work in progress. You're teaching them, but you're trying to do it by divorcing the anger and the resentment or the frustration you feel from the actual action you take.
mm. Nice. Can you come to my school of my kids and teach the
Again, the one thing I say, and I have a really awesome colleague. He works for my company. His name is Nick, and his goal is to be the best dad in the world, but for himself. He's not competing with anyone. But one of the
Mm,
things that we say to each other is, look, whilst we share all this great information, we are all work in progress. We still have slip ups as well. So there's no perfect parent anywhere.
no.
It's just all of us trying to do the very best we can, learning what we can, and trying to implement what we can. And I think it's like, I can hear from the things that you say as well that is similar. It's important that your partner is also uh, carried along in this. So we're kind of accountable to each other. If we say,
Mhm,
okay, look, listen, we're not yelling. We speak firmly, but we don't scream at kids, or we don't yell at kids. If anybody loses their temper in the heat of the moment, the other person is meant to, calm him down and tell him, hey, listen, remember we agreed on this. Okay, cool, cool, cool. And then you try to fix that. So yeah, so we're all work in progress.
yeah, 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 absolutely. No, the reason why I'm asking you to come to my school is because my little one, my 3-year-old, I had the feeling like, because he's from late November, right? So he's one of the youngest. I kind of had the feeling like what happened to him in kindergarten, like getting bitten and hit. Now he's doing in this year, right? So what was it? A week ago, 2 weeks ago, he bit a kid in the back,
Mm,
right? And come to find out, it was just a response to something that happened before that apparently wasn't good, resolved well enough by the teachers, right? Because he still had that resentment or anger within him, and he was just waiting his opportunity. He saw the kid run by, he's like, "Hey, I remember what you did," and went hang. But for some reason, I had a feeling that the teachers don't understand that process, which is curious with all those kids. But what you explain is like, look, if it happens right in the moment, you make sure that everything just, is resolved and understood by both parties. Plus, once they're calm, right? When they're in a better state of mind, that's when you do that again and figure
Yeah.
out, okay, how could you have responded? I
Yeah.
like that. I'm trying that with my kids, but at the moment I do it still in the moment itself, which means that one is crying. It's usually the younger one that hits the bigger one. So the bigger one starts crying because he got hit, right? And then I tell the younger one, is it nice if you hit your brother? And then he realizes, no, it's not. So then he starts crying too. Now I got two crying babies. Like, oh, come on, give me a break. But yeah, it's very interesting. And what you say, it's a process, right? We continuously,
Yeah.
if you look at it like that, it makes it more fun, right? If you just
Yeah.
remember, like, look, it's a process. Sometimes
Yeah.
I also act out, and it's okay. So yeah, I appreciate that. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad I asked you about your philosophy in regards to discipline. It's a great explanation. So thank you for that. Dude, I'm just wondering, because you have such a clear mind. What's something that I've discovered, but I'm working a little bit more with my wife, is purpose, right? I'm just wondering, have you discovered your purpose, and if so, is it? If not, is it something that you're investigating, and if so, what is it, and how did you discover it for yourself?
My purpose as a person, right?
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
Okay. So, I took a lot of time. Like we all come across this big question at some point in our lives. What is
Mm,
your purpose? Like, what is it all about? Like, what are you here for? And one of the things that one of the resources that I came across, and he talked about spending time thinking about the things that mean a lot to you, and looking at the things that you're also equipped to do naturally. And I'll tell you, if anybody asks me, okay, what is your superpower, is the wrong word, but what is it that you see you like doing and a lot of people may not like doing as much? For me, it's learning. Like, I really, really enjoy learning. My wife jokes because, like, the doorbell rings, bing bing, and then they've delivered books. I spend a lot of money on online courses and resources. I really enjoy learning, and for me, that's one of the reasons why I'm really keen on this whole parenting thing. I want to take as much information, as much useful information as I can, and then be able to pass that on to people in more digestible bits. Some people don't
mm,
enjoy reading. I enjoy reading and I enjoy learning. Some people don't, or maybe they love doing other things. I want to be able to take that information and share it with people in a way that will positively impact and benefit their lives. In this season of my life right now, it's parenting that is my major focus. 4 or 5 years
mm,
down the road, it may be something else related to having a wholesome life. One of the things is a guy called Brendan Burchard, and one of the things that he teaches, right, is about taking. So if I open up my phone for you right now and I show you my calendar, there's a prompt that goes off at 11:15 in the morning and 4:15 in the evening, and it,
mm,
it just says mindfulness reminder. If I open it, it states, I grow every day. I am wise. I am noble. I am powerful. I grow every day means I learn things. I learn things that are useful for me and others. I'm
mhm,
wise is not just like wisdom, but it's being able to take that information and apply it in real life context. I am noble means I am kind, I'm generous, I'm gracious, I'm decent to all the other human beings around me. And so basically, to come back to your question, what I feel my purpose is to take as much beneficial information as possible,
mhm,
filter it through the lens of my own unique perspective, and then share that with people in a way that will benefit and help them.
mm. Love it. I appreciate that. It's always a guess, right? For me as an interviewer, to ask certain question in an interview, and I had a feeling that you would have a magnificent answer, and you didn't. Yeah, you over delivered, so I appreciate that. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you very much. Do you mind if I ask you the same question?
No, man, by all means.
So what is your purpose, Klaas?
My purpose is to one, take action. Like, I love taking, like, that's what I love to do, take action, go live, and teach others in a way that I can make a difference in this life. So my purpose is to just make a difference in everybody's life as much as I can, influence the next person that I can. And I specifically now have made that I've made that smaller and smaller because I started thinking about that. Okay, so what does that mean? Does that mean that I'm going to help the neighbor every day, or does that mean that, you know what I mean? So I've specifically pinpointed that now into dadpreneurs. So I'm
Mm,
here to coach dadpreneurs to to upskill their business, right?
mm.
And and that's the most important thing, without losing their precious time with their loved ones, right? So they can spend more
Beautiful.
time with their kids and,
Beautiful.
and do what you say, like be really conscious. Uh,
Beautiful.
I appreciate that. So what I saw, for example, I'll share that real quick as well, that I loved and made me think, and that's it made it more powerful why I do what I do, right? Somebody posted, I'm working a 9 to 5, so I'm away 40 hours a week, more or less, right? Because we have commute, but more or less. Now I've become an entrepreneur and now I'm away 80 hours a week. Like, crap, that's right. That's exactly why I started Become a Fearless Father, because it doesn't make any sense. Like, I'm pushing everybody. No, I'm not pushing, but I'm showing people, like, being a entrepreneur, what the benefits are, right? And then I start thinking, yeah, that's right. So many entrepreneurs then start, and they just start, you hear it so much, grinding, hustling, right? It's like, no, that's not the point. The point is that you have the opportunity to be like, your kid's sick, and you can just say, hey, I know we have a live interview today, but sorry, man, I can't. My kid's sick, right?
Totally. Yeah.
But if I have a job, if I have a 9 to 5, and I tell my boss, hey, I can't come in, my kid's sick. Well, take a day off, take a vacation day, right? Now,
Yeah.
for me, it's like, I got a vacation day whenever I want. My boss is a hard ass. He might say, you still got to work while your kid's sick in bed, but you have that flexibility, and that makes it definitely worthwhile. That's why I teach what I teach and share what I share.
Mm.
So I appreciate you asking that. It's nice sometimes to put myself back in the role of being interviewed instead of asking all the questions. So thank you for that. Man, we've gone through a lot, and I still got a lot of questions. But I want to ask you this one because it's very
Sure.
important. And I got another one because you said you read a lot of books. So at the end, I definitely want you to share your top 3 books that you think would be absolutely really beneficial to dadpreneurs out there. But before that, as soon as we start focusing on having kids, focusing on our kids and stuff like that, what I've noticed as well is that we forget what's most important. We forget the one that gave us the gifts of having children, right? Our wives. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. What are some of the ways that you consciously do to make sure that you connect with your wife?
Okay. And this so first of all, disclaimer, this is one that I wish I could do even better, right?
Mm,
But
don't we all?
we I think we had a conversation about this I think it was maybe like 2.5 years ago. And we
Mm,
said, look, like, when the kids get into the picture, is like everything is all about them, and you find that you don't do things together as much as you used to. So two things. One, when we put the kids to bed, we spend 2 hours together. So we put the kids to bed average 8:30, and then we're downstairs together till like 10:30. And we try. Well, now we've started watching a bit of TV again, but there was a time we said, okay, if we end up watching TV together, it's cool to hang out, but we don't talk as much. And so there
mm,
was a period where we said, okay, when we're downstairs, all we do is talk, as in like TV off, right? And we did that for a period, and that really helped us connect. We started watching
mm,
TV again, not because we backslid, but I guess, yeah, things happen. The other thing that we used to do, which we now do not as regularly, is we make sure at least once every other week we go out together. It doesn't
mm,
it doesn't have to be like a date, but we go someplace. It might be to the cinema. It might be just go hang out. Like there's a little lake and a
oh,
garden
nice.
beside where we stay, and so we might just go sit there and we talk. And and sometimes just pulling yourself out of the normal environments where you normally are, like
Mm,
that's like your living room upstairs, like in the house. If you step out and you just go chill and do something together, you find that you tend to talk a lot more. Yeah, so those are the things that I think, creating time for conversation, not just to be side by side watching TV or parenting, but creating time when you can't do anything other than talk, right? That's really important. and then
Hmm.
scheduling time, at least if you can do it more frequently the better, but at least once every 2 weeks, to go off and do something together for a couple of hours, spend time together.
Sorry, you broke up there at the end.
Oh, okay. What was the last thing you heard before I broke off?
No, you were mentioning like it was just the last 5 words, I guess. So.
Okay. So yeah. So I said, it's important to spend time together outside the normal space where you normally are, like your house. Go somewhere, spend time together, chill. Make sure that when you, even in the evenings when you're both home and you want to spend quality time together, it's not time you spend watching TV together. It's time you actually spend communicating and talking, because intimacy is built on communication. That's what it's all about. Because if you listen to a lot of people who talk about maybe having gone through divorces or having gone through like difficult relationships, they say at some point the communication started to die. Like they were
Mm,
talking about transactional things. What are the kids taking? The kids tuition is due. Okay, the house rents this, the gas bills. They were talking about very transactional things, and not about things that really matter to them,
mm,
and that's when it started to die. But if you spend time sitting together, even if it's for 30, 45 minutes, an hour every evening, you're debriefing what your day was like, you're talking about stuff, you spend a lot of time talking about like your dreams. I think that for me is very important. If I think about what makes those moments special, when we share things that we're aspiring towards, either we're working on a project together, or I'm
mm,
giving my wife advice or she's giving me advice. When we talk about something in the future that we're working to get towards together, I find that at the end of those conversations we feel so much closer. And if I look at maybe like the last year, for example, if I you know you could have intimacy in like waves. For example, you're not, even if you have a best friend, you guys are not in communication at the same extent all throughout the year. If I think
mhm,
about the times when my wife and I felt like really so aware of our closeness last year, was when she was working on a project for her business, and she and I spent a lot of time together, brainstorming, creating, working
mhm,
on the branding and all of that. We talked a lot about it. We talked about the dreams that she had for the business. We talked about her life when it was successful. When we paint dreams for ourselves, for our kids, for our life together, I think that makes us feel so much more intimate and close.
mm. Yeah, I like that very well. Um, and again, yeah, I got to start upping my conscious level even more because I do a lot of stuff, and you're sharing this now, for example. And I remember last Sunday we were in the car for 2 hours because there was a lot of traffic, and I started explaining to her like all the stuff that I'm doing and where I see us and etc. etc. And sharing with her and asking her questions like how she sees things and stuff and what she would like to do and after that it was like, yeah, what you mentioned, right? You've done that and then you feel like, hey, look at that, we've been growing even a step more closer and stronger and the
Yeah,
connections there. And yeah, it's absolutely great advice. And unfortunately, yeah, it's one of the reasons why marriages don't end, right? Or end because people stop communicating.
yeah,
All right, man. We actually got some time, so I'm going to ask you one more question.
sure.
Um, what is your um, thought on setting goals? Because you just mentioned, right, the business, and we have 10-year goals, 5-year goals, and then year goals, 6-month goals, 3-month goals, week goals, daily goals, most likely as well. What is your thought on goals in comparison with the journey towards either reaching or not reaching the goal?
All right. Okay, so let me just be sure that I understand the
Sure.
question so I can explain it in the best possible way. So,
Mm.
what are my thoughts on goals, and then the journey to reach the goals, right? What was the last bit you said?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. So what's you have the goal and you have the journey towards reaching the goal. And I have the feeling that a lot of people are focusing too much on the goal and not realizing there's a whole journey towards that goal, right? So I'm just wondering, like, goal
Okay.
versus journey. What's your thought?
All
Go.
right, cool. So here's the thing. First of all, let's just talk a little bit about the goals, right?
Mm,
And let's take Klaas for example. Let's take you, right?
mm,
You've launched the podcast. Now, to do what you're doing And to make it so, if we fast forward 6 months down the road, the
Mm-hmm.
version of Klaus that's going to be successful, that's going to have a globally recognized podcast, that's going to be helping a lot of people, it's a different version from the Klaus that's speaking to me now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to take
Mm-hmm.
several levels of evolution and growth. There are going to be specific skills you're going to have to acquire, things that you may not be comfortable doing that you're going to have to do in order to get there. And
Mm-hmm.
so I have a lot of worthy goals that I want to do. And whenever I think about goals, I always think about what level of IO is this going to require? What are the skills that I'm going to need to learn? What are the things I'm going to need to believe in order to achieve those goals? And I find like a lot of times I hit my goals and I look back and I realize that the journey to that goal, fine, it was challenging, fine, it was tough. But when I'm working towards these things, it's when I feel the most alive. And so I think one, don't like we should be really careful about the kind of goals we set for ourselves. We should not set goals that are not worthy of us. Many goals are
Mm-hmm.
unworthy of the people that set them. We should set goals that are going to stretch us, that are going to help us grow towards those. But then we also need to be very tactical in the way we go about executing those goals and very accountable to ourselves. And so if we tell ourselves, I want to create this, and we work our way backwards, then we have a document and we have a plan that we can follow. And the I'm trying to remember what book that was. Anyway, one of the reasons why people fail to hit goals, and this came from a book, it escapes me now. One of the reasons people fail to hit goals is because they don't put those goals in front of their faces. And this is not just about writing them down, but
Mm-hmm.
if for example you said your goal is to have like a mega podcast in the next 6 months that has XYZ number of downloads, and you've broken down the steps you need to do that, then those steps you need to see them regularly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because seeing them regularly reminds you of the actions you need to take on a consistent basis and helps you follow through on those. So in terms of goals, like goals are amazing. We should get goals that are worthy of us and that will demand a different version of us, that will demand that we grow to the next level or next version of ourselves in order to execute them.
Mm. Nice. Yep, I like that. I'm glad I asked that question real quick before, before I went to the question that I wanted to ask you. As you mentioned, and as you mentioned, your wife jokes about it. Doorbell rings. I'm sure it's books for Ayo, right?
Yeah.
What would be the top three books that you, from your experience, would definitely recommend dampers to get in their um repertoire and start reading?
Okay. So one that I recommend really, really, really highly is The Awakened Family by Dr. Shefali Sabari.
Mm,
And I say that because before you start getting tactical in how you want to become better, I think it starts from a place of consciousness and awareness, right? Because what the awakened family really talks about is how many times we project our insecurities on our kids when we want to help them
mhm,
become certain things, and then when our actions let them feel like our love is conditional, right? So I
mm,
think that is a starting point. Now the next thing, the other one that I think is really, really good, especially if you want, because one of the things we need to do for our kids is to help them develop skills they will need to thrive in their own worlds, right?
mhm,
And there's a book called Peak Secrets from the New Science of Expertise that I think is really amazing. It talks a lot about how we acquire skills and
mhm,
how we can help our kids acquire like really, really good skills. And so for example, if you're coaching your child, or your child is struggling with a particular thing, maybe he's doing soccer, I think one of the most important things we can be for our kids is a coach, teaching him
mhm,
how to approach that task, breaking that task down into component parts, improving on each of those tasks, making sure we're stretching him just a little beyond his level of competence. I think that for a dad who wants to become a coach, I think that's a very, very important book. Now, the third book is one that, for a couple of people, they might find it a bit controversial, but I'll tell you exactly why I think it's such an important book. It's called The Alter Ego Effect by a guy called Todd Horman, right? And for many kids have utilized alter egos without being aware that they were utilizing alter egos, and there's a science behind that. For people who I know everybody knows what an alter ego is, but think about Superman and think about Clark Kent, right?
Mm-hmm.
For kids, what they found is that by creating like a composite ideal of yourself. So let's say, for example, my son is interested in basketball. And we say, okay, maybe his name is Tisha, and we say, okay, let's create a superhero. And this superhero, I mean, he has this trait when he's on the court. He doesn't worry about what anybody thinks. He stays focused. He stays this. He stays that. And then we give that superhero a name. And then whenever my son is stepping onto the court, that is who he becomes, right? There's so much science behind this for adults and for kids as well on how we can access elevated states of consciousness, how we can access a lot of resources that we already have within us. It's just a simple tool, but I think it's very powerful. When I read that book, my like the posters in my kids' room, like I redid it. We started creating alter egos for them, and it's fun, right? So I think that for a parent who wants to help their child navigate a lot of uncertainties, you can't control all the environments your kids are going to be in, but for a parent who wants to help their child develop their own inner resilience, I think The Alter Ego Effect is a very, very, very important book to read.
I like it. That's a great list. I'll say that also because I haven't read any three of them, so I got 3 new books to order. So I appreciate that. So yeah, man, it's been an hour. Time flew by. So thank you so much, Ayo, for being on. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed the golden nuggets that you shared. You said some small ones. I just say they were huge. So that's awesome. Everybody that's been watching, staying with us for an hour, listening to the podcast later on, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. I'm going to repeat it, I guess, until I stop doing podcasts. If you listen, I don't care if you understood everything in the whole hour. What I want for you and what my aim is just to get that one thing. And if you resonated with that, take it and take action. Find out for yourself how that's going to benefit you. Not just by saying, oh, that was great. No, action today, not tomorrow. Today is what counts. So that's my message for you. Thank you very much. Ayo again, thank you. I appreciate you. Everybody else, we will see each other soon, and take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Are you still meeting up with your friends now that you're a father? Kids making you stress out, you got no time for yourself to work out, read, or relax. Can you still remember the time you were hanging out with your friends, feeling energetic, happy, and confident? Spending time together and talking about your life and your crazy dreams. You're feeling alone now, don't you? No one to share your challenges with, and you're just running around from one storm into the next. Well, it's time to change this now. Join me and the Brotherhood of Fearless Fathers to speak on a weekly basis with like-minded dads to crush your challenges, face your fears with determination, be held accountable, and regain control of your life. If you want to become the hero your family needs you to be, then go to becomeafearlessfather.com/brotherhood. I'm looking forward to seeing you on one of our next calls.